Imagine the terror of a mother whose daughter vanishes overnight, leaving nothing behind but a trail of unanswered questions and the crushing weight of uncertainty. What would you do if you learned the woman you thought you knew was hiding a life darker than anyone could have ever imagined? Paige Bergfeld, a 34-year-old mother from Grand Junction, Colorado, disappeared in the blink of an eye. The investigation would uncover more than just her absence. It would unravel a secret life, and lead to a chilling discovery that would haunt everyone involved. For years, the truth remained buried, but when it finally surfaced, it shocked the world. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. And make sure to stay with me, because what you're about to hear will leave you speechless. Paige Meredith Bergfeld was born on April 27, 1973, in Atlanta, Georgia. At some point she along with her parents moved to Denver, Colorado, where she attended high school. In 1995, Bergfeld married her high school boyfriend, Howard Ron Beegler. Bergfeld studied nursing for a period at the University of Florida. They divorced in 1997 because Beegler did not want children and Bergfeld did. Her parents, Suzanne and Frank Bergfeld, described her as a loving, devoted, and excellent mother. In 1997, Bergfeld met Rob Dixon, a wealthy businessman whom she married a year later. The couple moved to a big house on Hill Avenue, in Grand Junction, Colorado. Bergfeld and Dixon had 3 children. The two had a complicated and volatile relationship, to the point where Bergfeld called 911 after a dispute in 2004. Bergfeld stated that her husband had threatened that she would come home and find their children all murdered. A year later, Bergfeld accused Dixon of attacking her, leading to him being charged with third-degree assault. In 2006, they divorced, and Dixon moved to Philadelphia. Bergfeld kept the house and custody of their 3 children. Bergfeld worked different jobs after her second divorce, including her preschool dance business, and sold high-end kitchen supplies for a company called Pampered Chef. To her friends, family, and neighbors, Paige was many things. First and foremost, she was a mother of 3 young children, each of them a bright light in her world. Paige had worked hard to build a life for herself and her children, always striving to balance the weight of her responsibilities with the love she had for her family. Those who knew her well spoke of her nurturing nature and her devotion to her children. To many, Paige appeared to be the epitome of what it meant to be a mother, responsible, attentive, and deeply involved in her children's lives. Her family and friends had no reason to question her life. She seemed to have it all together. On the outside, she led what seemed to be a very normal, even ideal, life. A business owner, Paige was known for her hard work and determination. But there was something more to Paige's life that very few knew about. Paige had secrets that were buried deep, hidden from the eyes of the people who cared for her. Her business and her family life were only part of who she was. Behind those facades, there was another world, one filled with danger, deception, and ultimately, death. It was a world that would come to light only after her disappearance, when the investigation started to reveal pieces of her hidden life, one shocking discovery at a time. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Paige's life seemed to be just like any other. She was working hard, balancing her duties as a business owner and mother while navigating relationships with family, friends, and the people she encountered in her personal and professional life. She had daily routines, taking her children to school, handling the demands of her business, and meeting with various clients. Nothing appeared out of the ordinary to those around her. Her social life seemed stable, and she had a network of people she could count on. Yet, there were elements of Paige's life that had begun to take a toll on her. While she was juggling everything, she was also balancing something far more complex and dangerous, something no one in her circle knew about until it was far too late. As the days passed in those final weeks, Paige's behavior had begun to show signs of strain. But it was a strain that was hidden in plain sight. To her friends and family, nothing seemed amiss. But beneath the routine, something darker was slowly closing in. It was this hidden side of Paige's life, this second life, that would become the key to unlocking the mystery of her disappearance and, eventually, the tragedy that would follow. At the time of her disappearance, Bergfeld had started reconnecting romantically with her first ex-husband, Howard Beegler. On June 28, 2007, Bergfeld left her home around 1 p.m. to meet Beegler for a picnic day. They were together until 7 p.m., then they separated and kept in touch via phone call. Beegler was one of the last people to speak to and see Bergfeld alive. Bergfeld never came home. Later, Bergfeld's 8-year-old daughter, Jess, went to the Mesa County Sheriff's Office to report her mother missing after she did not return home. After Bergfeld's disappearance, her brother, Craig, moved with his family from Seattle, Washington, to Bergfeld's house to help take care of her 3 kids. At first, there was hope, a faint hope that Paige had simply gotten caught up with work or had taken a brief trip that she hadn't communicated to her family. But as hours stretched into the day, and then into the next, the concern turned into fear. The search for Paige began in earnest, with friends, family, and police scouring the area for any sign of her. Mesa County Sheriff Stan Hilke was convinced that Bergfeld had not left of her own accord. The police quickly launched their investigation, focusing on the last known location of Paige. They traced her movements that evening, working to piece together the details of her whereabouts. Her car, a crucial lead, was not found in any parking lot known to the police, eerily empty with no signs of a struggle or any obvious clues to explain what had happened. But the deeper the investigators dug, the more unsettling the situation became. What was supposed to be a quick investigation soon grew into something much darker. Despite initial hopes that Paige might turn up safe, the circumstances of her disappearance took on a chilling tone. With no signs of a break-in, no obvious clues, and no direct leads, the case quickly became more complex. It wasn't just a case of a missing woman, it was a mystery that seemed to grow colder with each passing day, with every unanswered question pulling investigators deeper into uncertainty. For Paige's family and friends, the waiting and the not knowing became the hardest part. It was a terrifying realization that something had happened to her, something far more sinister than they had ever expected. On July 1, around 10 p.m., a 911 call reported what was later identified as Bergfeld's red Ford Focus in flames in an empty parking lot 2 miles from her house. In Bergfeld's car and on Highway 50, police found personal items, checks, and business cards from a company named Models Incorporated. Police looked through Bergfeld's computer and cell phone and discovered Models Incorporated was an escort business, which Bergfeld managed. There were also websites with Bergfeld's photo where she was known as a high-priced escort named Carrie. Bergfeld was leading a secret double life as an escort. According to Bergfeld's parents, she likely did it to financially support her children and provide for their lifestyle. Beegler, Bergfeld's first husband, stated that she had previously worked as a freelance exotic dancer. The Mesa County Sheriff's Office and the Grand Junction community launched a massive search to find Bergfeld. Search parties were dispatched to search the area, and missing person posters were put up for Bergfeld. Many volunteers were involved in the search for Bergfeld, in vehicles, on horseback, and with diving equipment. Mesa County Sheriff's Office had several suspects, including Bergfeld's ex-husbands, especially Dixon, but both had alibis. At the start of the investigation, authorities focused on Beegler, as he had been with Bergfeld on the day of her disappearance, and they met for a picnic. The sheriff's office also had the names of clients of Models Incorporated, of which there were more than 60 suspects. These formed a web of connections that suggested there was more to Paige's life than anyone had realized. She had been meeting with various men, clients of hers from her secret life as an escort. These men became key figures in the investigation, their relationships with Paige and their possible involvement now under scrutiny. But despite these disturbing discoveries, the investigation was far from simple. Early on, investigators were stymied by the lack of direct evidence. The passage of time and the circumstances surrounding Paige's disappearance made it difficult to gather key physical evidence that could confirm the cause of death. Her body was not yet found. In October 2007, Rubenstein's team was able to find the main suspect on the list since that suspect used a track phone. The suspect was Lester Ralph Jones, then 56, motorhome mechanic who was married at the time. Jones initially denied knowing Bergfeld, until officers showed him his call logs, where he had contacted Bergfeld and her escort agency before Bergfeld's disappearance. Jones has a previous criminal record, including a 5-year prison sentence for first-degree assault and second-degree attempted kidnapping of his ex-wife. Chief Deputy District Attorney Dan Rubenstein said that both he and the police were certain Jones was responsible for Bergfeld's disappearance, but it was difficult to arrest him without her body. On March 6, 2012, at 12:30 p.m., hikers found skeletal remains in the Route 50 area of Wells Gulch in Delta County, approximately 30 miles (48 kilometers) southeast of Grand Junction. Police were able to identify the remains as Paige Bergfeld from dental records. Rubenstein said, "There were some very key evidentiary things that we located. Specifically, there was duct tape that was around her skull and mandible, that indicates that she was kidnapped." Prosecutors and police concluded that Bergfeld had been kidnapped and murdered. However, due to the condition of her body, they were unable to determine the cause of death. As the investigation continued, detectives began to focus on several suspects who may have been involved in Paige's life, or death. The first was Dixon, the father of her children, a man who had a complicated relationship with Paige. They had been married at one point, and their union had been marked by tension and conflict. But after checking his alibi, investigators ruled Dixon out as a suspect. He had an ironclad defense. Next was Bobby, a former client of Paige's. Bobby's suspicious behavior in the days following her disappearance caught the attention of the investigators. He had made conflicting statements and acted in ways that raised red flags. However, despite the alarm bells, investigators couldn't find any direct evidence linking him to Paige's disappearance. Bobby remained a person of interest, but without hard evidence, the case went cold on him. With every new piece of evidence, the investigation deepened the mystery of Paige's life and her tragic end. But the more the police uncovered, the more they realized they were dealing with something far more complex than they had ever anticipated. It was a case where the past held the key to unlocking the secrets of the present, and it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. As the investigation continued, one breakthrough would forever change the direction of the case. A critical clue was uncovered that would prove to be pivotal in linking the prime suspect to Paige's tragic fate: dog hairs. These weren't just any ordinary hairs, they were discovered on Paige's remains during the forensic examination. The hairs were sent to the lab for testing, and the results were startling. They matched the DNA of a dog that belonged to Lester Ralph Jones, the man who had become the key suspect in Paige's disappearance. This discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation. Until this point, investigators had gathered a variety of circumstantial evidence, but nothing that could directly tie Brent to the crime. The dog hairs, however, painted a much clearer picture. They placed Jones in close proximity to Paige at a crucial time, around the time of her disappearance. Forensic analysis of the hairs confirmed that they were not just randomly placed, but instead, likely transferred in a way that indicated contact between Jones and Paige, either before or after her abduction. This was the smoking gun the investigators had been waiting for. It provided the first real piece of physical evidence that Jones had been near Paige, and it set him apart from the other suspects. The implications of this discovery were massive. It was no longer a case of just circumstantial evidence or questionable alibis, it was forensic evidence linking Jones directly to Paige's remains. With this, investigators could now establish that he had been at the scene, and with other forensic findings, it became clearer that he was the primary suspect in the case. As the investigation pieced together this new evidence, the connection between Jones and the crime became undeniable. His proximity to Paige, combined with the dog hairs and the other forensic evidence found at the scene, positioned him squarely as the one responsible for Paige's death. It was a breakthrough that not only pointed the investigation in a new direction but also solidified the growing suspicions surrounding him. With this evidence, the case that had once seemed like an unsolvable mystery now began to take shape, bringing investigators closer to uncovering the truth behind Paige's disappearance, and ultimately, her death. After years of uncertainty, countless twists, and dead ends, the investigation into Paige Bergfeld's disappearance reached a dramatic turning point in 2014. The mounting evidence, dog hairs, forensic analysis, and phone records, led authorities to Lester Ralph Jones, a man with ties to Paige and a dark history. He was arrested and charged with her kidnapping and murder. The arrest came as a sense of relief to Paige's family, who had been waiting for justice, but it was also the beginning of a long and emotional legal battle. The trial that followed was nothing short of intense. On July 25, 2016, the first trial began. The prosecutors argued that Jones kidnapped and murdered Bergfeld, drove her car down Highway 50, dumped her body in a ravine, and then returned to Grand Junction, where he set her car on fire. Although Jones was initially charged with arson, the charge was later dismissed due to the statute of limitations expiring. In September 2016, the first trial against Jones was declared a mistrial because the jury could not agree on a verdict. In the second trial, on December 27, 2016, the prosecution presented a compelling case, showcasing the forensic evidence that had ultimately linked Jones to the crime. Key pieces of evidence, like the dog hairs found on Paige's remains and the detailed phone records that showed his communication with Paige, all pointed to him as the killer. Forensic analysis and expert testimony solidified the connection between Jones and the crime, leaving little room for doubt. The defense, however, attempted to create doubt. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that the dog hairs alone weren't enough to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But despite these arguments, the jury saw through the defense's claims. The mounting weight of the evidence, combined with Jones' suspicious history and behavior, left them with little choice but to find him guilty. In the end, Lester Ralph Jones was convicted of both kidnapping and murder. The jury's decision brought a sense of closure to the family and the community, though no verdict could ever truly heal the pain caused by Paige's death. Jones was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would never again walk free. For Paige's family, the conviction was a bittersweet victory. While they were relieved that the truth had finally come to light, the emotional toll of the case was far from over. They spoke of the years of grief and uncertainty, of the pain of not knowing what had happened to their loved one. And while they could never fully move past the loss of Paige, knowing that her killer was behind bars provided them with a sense of justice, however small, that they could finally hold on to. This case serves as a stark reminder of the dangers that can come with leading a double life. Paige Bergfeld's tragic story is one of deception, secrets, and ultimately, betrayal. It underscores how far a predator will go to conceal their actions, using charm and manipulation to hide their dark side. In the end, it was not just Paige's secret life that led to her death, it was the ruthless actions of someone who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. But it's also a testament to the persistence of law enforcement in solving cold cases. For years, Paige's family waited for answers, and the police faced numerous obstacles. Yet, the relentless pursuit of justice, combined with critical evidence and breakthroughs, ultimately brought Paige's killer to justice. It's a story of dedication and the determination to ensure that the truth, no matter how buried, will eventually come to light. For Paige's family, the pain of their loss remains, but at least they have closure. They no longer have to wonder what happened to their beloved daughter, sister, and mother. But the impact of this case extends far beyond just one family. It highlights the devastating consequences of violence, deception, and the unimaginable grief that follows. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories. Thanks for watching.